Hello, welcome to Fiber Trek. My name is Sarah. I am chatting with you from the state of Maine in the United States, where it is November. Very excited about that. It's finally gotten cold. It was a very muggy September, October, which made me very grouchy. I don't like to be hot. I like cool, crisp air, soup, wood stoves, and wool. So I've finally reached the season. I may have a co-host. Ruby is on the loose. She's headed over here right now. Come here, Rubes. Let's see if she can bring her up. Come here, bud. Come here. Come here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see her. Oh, where are you going? Not a very smart habit. So Ruby's on the loose. This is my 8-month-old border collie puppy. Can you look at the camera, love? And part of the reason I've been gone so long is this little rascal. So hard to keep her entertained, get my own bits and pieces done. Hi, honey bear. And also get everything out on the floor and podcast. But she looks like she's ready to allow me to do that as long as I pet her. So welcome. You are most welcome here. I'm happy to be back chatting with you about wool. It's appropriate. This is Wovember. I'll talk a little bit about that later on in the podcast. Thank you so much for those of you who have messaged me or reached out through Instagram. Some of you were concerned about my well-being and where I've been and how I've been, and I really appreciate you thinking of me in this big, great world. I have been off the airwaves for a while, and to get myself sorted out, I'm feeling a little bit steadier that way, and so we'll see how today goes. She is totally sharking right now. So that means she's wandering around looking for something to get into. Sometimes she'll walk in and it'll just be hanging from a tooth, and she'll look at me like, I don't know, a tissue or my boot, and she'll just like waggle the tooth, waggle her jaw, and then it will wiggle, and I'll sit and I'll look at her and so she's very cunning. She's cunning, as we say in Maine. Have you ever heard that? In Maine we say, oh, so cunning. To describe babies or things that are cute, cunning. So don't take that the wrong way. She is cunning, and she's also cunning. Right. So did I welcome you? Welcome. And let's get started right away with agenda, shall we? What we're going to talk about. So I have some finished items. I definitely have works in progress. Although I'm a bit of a muddle there. Maybe perhaps you can help me out. And I have acquisitions and discoveries. I have Wovember. I wanted to talk a little bit about Blacker yarn and their brushwork and events. I think that'll probably take us and wrap us up. Excuse me for just a minute. Ruby, Rubidiah, come on. So I like to just check in with her with my voice so she knows that I'm attempting to be omnipotent and watch her at all moments. She doesn't buy any of it. Come on, sweet girl. So finished, and I think this is kind of what set me on a course or a trajectory of muddledness, is I finished my sea change sweater. I knit this out of Blacker's Cornish Tin. It's by Jennifer Steingass. Again, the name of the pattern is Sea Change. It's 2 colors. She has it a little bit different design. She does a yoke in a different color, and she also does a crew neck yoke, and I chose to do an I-cord bind off. I just like the look of that better. I just think it accentuates the yoke more than having the crew neck. I don't know, sometimes crew neck for me gets a little bit, I don't know the word. So anyway, I'm not going to try to describe it or articulate it. So I like the I-cord bind off. I think it's a bit cleaner. If you remember, I had knit this almost to like the center part of the pattern, and I had to rip it out because my gauge was off, which is not typically like me. I had knit the sleeves as a gauge swatch, and that seemed to have been on the money, but I actually knit this sweater in the needle recommended, which I think is a US 6. And I usually have to go up. So Jen Steingass and I might be soul gauge sisters. Does not happen very often for me. I really, really love knitting yokes. I think that's pretty much all that's in my queue. Most of you know that if you watch this podcast. I have a number of her other yokes lined up, and I'll kind of detail them in discoveries. But I'm trying to think if I made any other. I shortened the length of this sweater a bit. But the yoke really sits nicely across the top of the shoulder. And when knitting yokes, it is, for me, I do like to pay attention to my row gauge so that I'm getting the yoke set in the right place. Sometimes they can be a bit too low and it kind of drops your shoulder a little bit, and I just like the look of the bringing it up. So I wanted it to have that placement, appropriate placement. So that is the Sea Change by Jen Steingass. It's finished. I've worn it. I've worn it with her. She was a speaker at my Highlands on the Fly retreat in T2R9, which is in northern Maine. She did a really lovely job. She showcased her samples, and she stayed on the next day for the vendor market, and she was just really enjoyable to be around, and had a lot to inspiration to offer everybody there at the retreat. I also finished the Owlette by Kate Davies for my niece. There are pictures on my Instagram account, which you can also access through my blog. And I think I uploaded that to my Ravelry page. I knit that out of Cascade Eco. I'd originally bought the yarn. I think the squirrels are out if you can hear that kerfuffle in the background. I had originally bought that Cascade Eco to knit my nephew a sweater. It was a kind of an ash gray, and he didn't like it. He wanted a gray. So we went and bought a different color of Cascade Eco, so they each got a sweater. So that went out to her because she's growing very quickly, and I wanted her to be able to wear it. So off it went. I think that's really it for finished bits and pieces. The Sea Change sweater, when I had to rip it out, and I made a commitment to put it right back on the needles and get it finished, kind of stifled my sweater knitting. And I'm having a hard time starting another sweater now. I don't know, it's just, I don't know, it's like a muddling in my head. I'm having a hard time getting organized. I knit a number of gauge swatches, and since we're going into works in progress, it makes sense to talk about that. So I had wanted to knit Jen Steingass's Sigrun, and that's another yoke. And I had bought yarn for it at, oh, curses. The Bold Coast retreat that I run in Machiasport, and I had bought it from Maine Yarn and Fiber Supply. And I knit a gauge, and I had thought that it would work. I knit a gauge swatch. It is a Romney alpaca cross. And at the end of the day, this is Sigrun. At the end of the day, I didn't like the fabric. Now, Romney is a long stapled wool, and I was kind of, knitting it on the recommended needle, and I just decided that in order to get the fabric that I wanted, which was a little bit more plush, with the longer staple, I was going to have to go down a needle size to kind of fill in the fabric, make it squishier. So these are my colors that I got. These are all over dyed grays. So I got this trio. I may have talked about that. I got this trio for the color work. Oh no. Is it gonna focus? Am I in autofocus? I don't know. Sorry. Am I in focus? Looks like it. And then this color for the main color. And I had gotten the cuffs knit in the color work and kind of up to here, and I ripped it all out. Hey Goose, come on over. So So then I went looking for another sweater for that, and I've decided to do the Branches and Buds by Carrie Bostic Hogue from her Making magazine. And I can't decide if I'm going to do each of the branches in a different color or do two the same color and the middle a different color or not. You'll probably get the gist of what you're looking at. So I also, that has a crew neck, and I wanted to do a provisional cast on so I could do an I-cord bind off. So that's kind of hard to get up and running and find the waist yarn, and last night I was like, oh, I'm gonna sit down and do this, and I went to sit down and grab my 5s, and it's like, my needles were more organized, I'd probably be better off, but they're kind of all just shoved in bags if they're not an interchangeable set. And the interchangeable set that I wanted to use, I couldn't find. I know, it's a big sob story of woe. But anyway, that's part of my goal for today, is to get that cast on provisionally. It's worked from the neck down. I'm going to use a US 5, I believe, and hope that I can attain that fabric. The other thing that I want to cast on is a pair of mittens. And this kind of the barrier to that project is, first I had to find a pattern that I wanted to use, and second I had to, well, here we go. I bought a pattern in Norwegian, and I found, this was in my favorites. These are the Astrantia by Wenche Rald. Is that helpful at all? Oh, camera. I should make sure I'm on autofocus, eh? And it's all in Norwegian. And I was like, I bet I can figure that out. And I had lots of support from my friends who truly believed in my ability. And luckily, one of my friends, Emily of Fibertown, she recommended a website where you can find in a diverse amount of languages, in different languages, how about that, popular knitting terms. And it's on knittingfool.com. And I was able to go to Norwegian, and it lists the translation of those knitting terms. So I'm going to print out that pattern. I'm going to translate the chart symbols and go from there. Because I think it's mittens. You cast them on, and I have an understanding of knitting construction, basic mitten construction. So I can follow, as long as I can follow the charts, which I think I can. I think I'm good to go. So anyway, that has to be done in order to cast that on. And I'm really looking forward to casting that on because I bought some special yarn. This is Kashgora from Port Fiber. And I guess I'll just tell you now, I had it in Acquisitions and Discoveries. So she took on a piece of the Peace Fleece business when they sold. Harrisville Designs bought the Peace Fleece brand, and Casey of Port Fiber took on this cooperative product. This is Kashgora, which is it's a crossbred Angoran cashmere goat, and the goats are raised in Tajikistan and Afghanistan, and the fiber is then spun in Tajikistan by hand spinners in a cooperative. And she has a couple different weights. I bought the Sport. It's hand dyed there. So I have hand spun by Malika and Gulsara. And when you get your spinning, I'm gonna check my focus. How about that? When you get your spinning, it details the spinner and it details the colorway, pannier and lichen, the yardage, the weight, and a little bit about the people who did it. So I'm just going to double check my focus before I record 45 minutes and have to do it again. So I was in the wrong focus mode. So I'll just show you those gals again. So, yeah, so it was really exciting to talk to Casey a little bit and I've been looking forward to working with this yarn. And so the Astrantia mittens I'm going to knit with this. And I had this thought that I would use them as sleeping mittens. I know. As I kind of worked through this process, I was like, I have sleeping mittens, I have a heating pad. I was like, oh no. I'm like my grandmother who used to travel with her pillow and, this and that. And, but anyway, it's self-care is really important. And so I think having a pair of sleeping mitts to put on after you've, put on your hand cream and snuggle into bed. Casey had a pair of mittens knit up, and they were really luxurious, and I thought it would just be a nice treat. So those are going to go on. I am going to work on the Oa by Kate Davies. That is going to be, that's a challenge for me. I'm really trying to work on increasing in pattern, and I don't know why there's such a difficult, like a spatial awareness difficulty. Like I'm just not really able to think about that and manipulate the charts in my head or understand the outcomes. So I am kind of stymied a little bit there. I did look at the strands, what do they call on Ravelry? The forums on Ravelry, the threads on Ravelry. I found some ideas, but I think in the end I'm just going to have to come up with my own system. And so when you're kind of inventing those systems, it just takes a little bit more creative energy and process. But, whoops. Here it is. I purchased El Centrum 3-ply to do this sweater. And here, this was from her Isla book. And I have it in, I know, hold your hats, kids. The main color is going to be a light gray. The patterning will be done in the dark gray. I've talked about this before, and the accent will be in a cherry red. It's pretty traditional. But I like I like that. I like watching that evolve and the classic beauty of that. So that has to get sorted out in a number of ways. And then on the needles, with great progress after ripping back a significant amount, is the Lulu, which is by Julie Weisenberger. And this is from Coco Knits. It's a top-down tunic. Oh, curses. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my fine motor skills. I'm knitting this out of my Shackleton yarn. And here is the Lulu. Now, I didn't realize it, but this has a specific name, the way you create the shoulder shaping. So it all starts off flat, and then you join in the round at the neckline, which is the V-neck. You can see that here on the piece. So here's the top, and there's a bit of a V-neck. This might be hard to show you because it's a bit squinched, but here is that shoulder, set in shoulder. Do you see that? I don't know. So this this line right here is going to sit along the top of the shoulder like this, so you get a set-in sleeve. I hear a lot of chat about set-in sleeves being a superior sleeve. Oh, curses. Because it provides more structure and more durability. I'm not 100% sure about that. I have inclination that seamed and piece sweaters are really originated from people wanting to transfer sweaters into patterns for the mass market, and it kind of came through the sewing world and the patterning in the sewing world versus through the traditional world of creating yokes and sweaters and gussets and things like that, but I was going to do a little bit more research. I've knit a lot of yokes. I don't struggle with wear on the shoulders or hanging funny or not having structure. I knit this cerise, beautiful yoke sweater. It doesn't hang or pull or lose its shape. I knit this stroker out of Nash Island Light. I mean, it doesn't have mass amounts of wear. I've used this to work on the island outside, canoeing. I mean, there's nothing happening to those shoulders. I've knit, I can't remember the name of this one, but it's by a Handmade Knits. Melissa Shrewsbury, maybe? This has a cable. It's knit out of a Lincoln main yarn, and it's super heavy. And again, it does suit my frame. It doesn't look like it's hanging off of my frame at the shoulder. So I also knit a sweater that's knit from the top down, and you knit out and you pick up from the shoulders here. I think it's like a gusset or a saddle shoulder all in one piece. That doesn't lose its shape. That's traditionally how I think Ganzis were knit. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because sometimes I see yokes and their popularity, and there's like this kind of discourse about the ability of the yoke to hold up. And so anyway, and I can understand that the set-in sleeve does provide more structure, and it has a different way of sitting on the body, and people have different shapes, but I didn't want the yoke to not get its due credit for being a durable or working garment, that it does have that capability. So anyway, this is knit in one piece, and it does have a set-in sleeve construction. So anyway, that's kind of interesting, and I didn't realize it was a thing until I was reading an interview with, I think, Karen Templar from the Fringe Supply Company in this book, and she mentions Julie Weissenberg's construction, and I was like, oh, it's a thing. Like, it's a specific way of looking at construction. Let me see if I can just find what she calls it. I probably won't be able to that fast. Oh yeah, I'm really intrigued by Julie Weissenberg's top-down method, aka the Cocoa Knits method, that leads to English tailored shoulders and set-in sleeves. There you go. So if you prefer that look, you might be able to use some of the tips from Cocoa Knits to achieve that without having to seam or set in a sleeve. I'm also working on Love and Lemons by Melanie Berg. This is a shawl I've been working on for a year. Kind of sits and then I pick it up. And it's knit with Piper from Quince & Co. or Quince & Company. So I'm also working on the Love and Lemons shawl by Melanie Berg. I'm knitting it out of Piper from Quince & Company yarns. I don't know the colorway. I'm going to be a little bit honest. This is a mohair merino cross singles yarn. And I think it's going to be a beautiful end product. But I'm definitely more motivated by these yarns. There's more of a textured experience with that for me. This is, sometimes when I'm knitting on this, it feels like the cotton you pull out of a pill bot. I don't know, it has this kind of, I don't know. So I don't work on it for very long periods of time, but I am going to finish it, and I may end up giving it as a gift. It is a beautiful yarn, and it works up beautifully with drape, and it's very catching to the eye, but I haven't necessarily enjoyed the tangible experience of it. So that's going, continues to go. Oh, every time I look at what's left, because I'm just going to knit the whole ball, I think she recommends 3 skeins, and this is my second skein. But I'm like, I have that much more. I know. I do want to finish it, though, and just be done with it and move it along. I think that's it really for things that I would like to work on and knit. I am looking at casting on in tuku wool and their fingering the flea cardigan by Pineguri, and I just gotta get myself sorted out. I did the gauge swatch for that. I have to ball up all of the skeins, the color skeins, and I realized that last night because I was like, oh, I'll cast that on. So that's kind of it. I think there was one knitted project I showed you. Oh, there was two. And everything else was like, I'd like to get this going. But again, there's this kind of weird resistance. And every time I sit down to do it, something comes up. I will say that a good chunk of my time, I kind of interval it on my days off, is between, I take her out in the morning for an hour. We take a nap. I take her out for 40 minutes in mid-afternoon, and then I take her out for another hour in the late afternoon when we do a run. So I do 3 miles with her at the end of the day to try to like seal the deal and then play 20 minutes of Frisbee. And so it's just hard to kind of get steeped into a project, whatever that might be, and then like move out. So coming up with new strategies to have things set up and be in a situation where, I don't know, sometimes I just want to sink deep into doing something and it's hard to get started. I think probably that is a hard part for me, and break away and come back and break away and come back. I also have a ton of sewing that I'm trying to get done. That just kind of, just stagnancy seems to be the theme. I have a lot of projects for Fiber Trek I need to get done. And I don't want to underestimate the power of the other personal pieces of my life that have unfolded over the past year and are unfolding, but I also want to be able to compartmentalize my energy so it's like, okay, that is for that, this is for this, this is for this, and I'm having kind of a hard time moving within that framework. So coming up with a new framework, making lists, kind of getting a little bit more disciplined about my time management, I think will be helpful and important in moving some of these projects along. Let's see. So acquisitions and discoveries. I have quite a few bits and pieces to talk about that I think you might find interesting. I am participating in Wovember. That is a celebrating all things wool in the month of November. It's really, oh, I hear her. It's really the brainchild of Louise of Knit British and Knit Sonic, Felicity Ford, and they kind of help organize blog posts and prompts to kind of think about wool in our life. I'm participating in the Instagram prompt a day, and I think that's being kind of co-hosted by Yarn in the City. I think I didn't write that down, so I could be wrong. But you can find out more about that through the Wovember Instagram feed and the blog. I'm excited because I think a article that I participated in with my Fleecewise comrades, Emily of Fibertown, Claire of the Woolly Thistle and the New Hampshire Knits podcast, and Sarah Pomegranate of Yarns at Yinhu, we all compiled a article together about fleece and friendship, and we submitted that, and they were very excited about it, so I'm hoping that appears in their blog, so look out for that. Their theme this year is Wool Meets Wellness, and I had a really hard time with the first prompt they did on the Instagram challenge, which was wool, and I talk about that connection, my relationship to wool, quite a bit on this podcast, and I feel like in some ways the content over the past couple months has been lacking, hasn't been as rich as it probably could be. And I feel like the last time I really kind of touched on that deep conversation that we can have about wool and the way that it enriches our craft was on my landing episode and talking about landscape and coming into landing, and I kind of gave you some ideas about wool, land conservation and the vocabulary and language used around that, and how I feel that it connects with wool. And so as I'm thinking about this prompt and wool in my life, I just kind of wanted to reiterate along that theme of wool and wellness that really, as much as I do love finished projects and they're beautiful and I love knitting, I love wool and raw wool and the process of sheep and shepherding and shepherdessing and farming and stewarding. I love talking about it. I love thinking about it. And I just wanted to kind of pull that back up to the surface of the conversation. And I'm so glad Wovember was kind of helped me do that. And just have the opportunity to reflect on it. We don't have to talk about it, or that there's a deeper understanding and a deeper knowing when it comes to this. And how important that is. And I don't necessarily need to name it or articulate it, but I wanted to bring it back up in a way that reminds people who've come to this podcast that's kind of the source of all of the question asking that we do here and decision making that goes into my projects and spinning and etc. So if you want to just make sure to check out Wovember and take an opportunity to reflect on wool and wellness for yourself, I would encourage you to do so. I think that was probably not as well organized as it could be, but it doesn't have to be, because it may be the driving point for me in this discussion is that wool is about, it's a knowing, it's an intuitive base from which to look at the world and filter the world, and I'm just happy to have that. And it is a big piece of my wellness and relationship and connectedness and even my own physical movement. Wool gets me out and moving. The sheep, Ruby, rounding up on the island with Nash. I'm so fortunate to be invited and be a part of that. Throwing fleeces, skirting fleeces, moving fleeces, wet fleeces, carding, spinning, all of that great physiological connection that we get when we engage in this process. Right. So it wasn't meant to be a lecture. It was meant to be more of an opportunity to ask more questions and to think deeper about your connection with wool. I don't want it to ever sound as if I'm telling you, or it should be, or I don't want it to be a righteous. I want it to be inclusive and an invitation to participate in some way. So I had a really wonderful conversation with some women at the retreat who are very interested in learning more, and that they want to, deepen their understanding of fleece and fiber and how that responds, how that works within their own knitting. And so I always strive to be inclusionary so that people who are just coming in to wool and natural fibers feel like they have the opportunity to ask the questions that they want to ask. Right, so, I keep holding this up, and I was really lucky that a friend of mine brought this back. This was from Claire of the Woolly Thistle as she traveled this summer on her Scottish adventures, her own fiber trek. This is Uist wool, and Uist is in the Outer Hebrides off of Scotland. They are a spinning mill and wool center, that's what they describe themselves as on their website. And this is based on cooperative values. It's kind of similar to what North Ronaldsay did with their mill. And they provide a space for local fleeces to be used in and turned into yarn and other products. I'm just making sure. Cooperative values, fresh purpose for local fleeces, their Outer Hebrides. They call this a slubbing cake. And this is after carding and before spinning. It kind of reminds me, if you're familiar with Plotolopi, it's a pencil roving. You probably could knit with it. You can spin with it. But just note that the diameter of that is, you can't get anything bigger unless, I guess, you could double it and spin. So anyway, I'm not sure if I'm going to knit with it, like knit kind of a big cushy cowl, or if I'm going to spin it. I don't know yet. But isn't that fun with the different colors? So Uist wool slub cake, very excited about that. I also received a package, speaking of Scottish Islands, from my dear friend Louise and Mark on Fur's Nest Farm. And I had a wonderful conversation with the two of them. And I think I've talked about it before, but I do want to put out there that the farm, their children, their family, are one of the strongest reasons that I am the knitter and spinner and have the strong interest in wool that I have today. And I just really feel blessed and am so thankful and grateful that they were so willing to pull me in and have taken me on and, and encouraged me to visit and be a part of their work over the past 20 years. So in that conversation with them, I just had this real renewed, I miss them so much. I received this package and they are so excited about this podcast and they're so excited about wool, and I just am really, again, grateful for their encouragement and mentorship and learning that I've been able to do. So Louise sent me a package, and she always includes digestive biscuits because those are my favorite thing in the whole wide world. And she included this product from this woman on mainland Orkney, I think. This is Orkney Tweed. And 100% Orkney wool, tweed, and rugs, reared, sheared, spun, and woven in the Northern Isles. Our tweed and rugs have been produced from the natural undyed wool from our own flock of Zwarbles and Texel, sheep reared in the Orkney Islands. The Zwarble fleece is thick and springy with a true black base, a good crimp, and a long staple, which makes it ideal for spinning and weaving. Along with the fine quality white wool, makes this a special and unique product. You can find them on Facebook at Coppensy Zwarbles Orkney Tweed, and they have a website, orkneytweed.co.uk. So Nancy Ferguson, this is the Zwarble sheep. This is a breed that originates in Holland. They have very long legs. I think I've talked about this before. I'm always a little bit like, whoa, surprised when I see pictures of them. And as she describes, they have this kind of like rich black fleece. So they produce blankets and other products. And I got some yarn from her as well. And that's at home. If you don't know my story, I have two homes where I live with my parents. That's one of them when I'm down in southern Maine. And then I have a house that I share with my husband in northern Maine. And that's where most of all of my, I'm having a hard time. That's where most of my stash is. And I just brought this little bit down. So this is a keychain Orkney Tweed. So check them out. I didn't necessarily see wool on the site, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Let's see. That might be blacker. Yeah, so they have caps and blankets. Orkney Tweed. So really exciting. So that was Orkney Tweed, and it's just wonderful to get a wool product from Orkney and be able to promote that. I picked up the latest Making magazine edited by Carrie Bostick-Hogue. This is the Lines issue, and I was inspired by Mary Jane Mucklestone's sweater. I'm trying to find it here. Here it is. Another yoke, and also there's kind of a nice big plushy cardigan in here by Thread and Ladle by Beatrice Dolan. So speaking of Beatrice Dolan, my brother, I don't know if I shared this, generously picked up Maine Knits for me. There's a couple patterns in here I think are interesting. And one of them is this vest. Now I thought I'd be able to do this out of the Hebridean I purchased from Brylan Yarn Company on Berneray. But it's so dark that the texture of the stitches doesn't show up, so I'm going to have to shift my thoughts for that. And then I was also able to procure a copy of this Woods book, and mainly I wanted this for Jennifer Steingass's yoke pattern in it, which she does out of Isle yarns. And this is called the Windfell sweater. But I also really ended up loving this dress, the Delamere dress. Ow, my hair, so long. And it's an interesting framework for thinking about designers and yarn. So they interview the designer, they interview the maker of the yarn, producer of the yarn. And so you can check out more about this this book from the Woolly Thistle. So I know that she has been carrying this, so you can see it there if you're interested in exploring it further. I was lucky enough to also be gifted a bag by my friend Emily of Fibertown. I know that she and Claire of the Woolly Thistle are doing a collaborative, and she's making bags from her botanically printed fabrics as well as her hand weaving. And so this is from some fabric she picked up in Paris this past summer. I was very much spoiled by my dear friends, the Wool Wenches. When we went on retreat this past weekend, we got an Airbnb and we just wanted to spend some time together. So we did it, and there was some spoiling that happened. Sarah Pomegranate, Yarns at Yunhu. It's a really wonderful podcast. If you're not listening to her, she's audio. That really is an interdisciplinary look at creativity, whether it's knitting, cooking, poetry. There's a lot of opportunity for reflection there, and I would encourage anybody to go on over there and listen to it, because she does tap into a number of different topics, and I think there's something for everybody. But she made these, oh, I didn't bring it over. She made these really cool fabric bracelets with clasps. Let me grab it for you. In the meantime, you can listen to my rascally puppy. I thought this was a really neat use for fabric scraps. So here is the bracelet. Kind of cool, huh? And so she made one. We all sent her scraps, and she made one from each of our scrap bags so we can kind of be connected. So thank you so much, all of you, for a wonderful weekend and lots of inspiration. Let's see. I was also sent the Boosta Beanie kit from Upton Yarns, and she put together some kits with her indigo dyed yarn and her natural Romney yarn. I'm trying to think. So it's a 3-ply Romney and a 3-ply straws Farm Island sheep in the indigo. So this is the Romney, and here's the indigo for the Boosta Beanie. And I'm going to put that on the needles. I'm thinking I'll do that one for my husband, Rob. And then he can have a Boosta Beanie, and I can have a Boosta Beanie. So those are some fun bits and pieces that are kind of out there, and if you're looking for something, you know, like a kit like that, or books for inspiration, you can head on over to Upton Yarns and or the Woolly Thistle. The other great inspiration out there is Blacker Yarns, and I was generously sent some brushwork to sample, and I just missed the deadline, but it really is a great opportunity to talk about Blacker Yarns, which is where I was able to begin my breed-specific journey, and I'm so grateful and thankful for that. So they're celebrating birthdays by putting out specialty yarns, and I think I have my label. So here it is, brushwork. For our very special birthday yarn this year, we've created a blend that's truly one of a kind. So Scottish Beaumont, our very special sheep, their fiber is renowned for its superb fine quality. They were originally developed by crossing Saxon Merino with Shetland to make a Merino-style sheep which could live comfortably in the UK's damp climate. The majority of Scottish Beaumont fiber goes into luxury garments, so we were thrilled when Sue managed to purchase a bale of Blacker yarn. They blended this with 10% Castle Milk Moret, a breed listed as at risk, and there are only around 1,000 of these sheep left. and they produce a wonderfully plump and bouncy brown fleece, which adds a depth of color and a touch of rustic character. And to give it a little bit more drape and luxury, in the woolen spun yarn, we added 20% British alpaca. So it's a blend, and this colorway is it's considered a sport weight. But let me show you my sample. I did some texture and I did some cable. And it really is that lovely sage green. So there's the stockinette, there's the garter, some seed, and the cables. The cables are really subtle. They have a kind of a muted effect. And just gonna look and see. It looks like it's a 2-ply yarn. So I believe they still have brushwork on the website. I really enjoyed knitting with this woolen spun yarn. I loved that there is a bit of, like, look at that, whoop, whoop, bounce to it, you know, versus something when you knit in a Romney, you don't really get that elasticity and resilience. So that's really coming from that Merino and Shetland and Castle Milk Morat. So I thought it really worked up well in some of these textured stitches here, and I really thought it was beautiful in the stockinette. It fills in all those gaps and gives a really nice subtle fabric to it. Like I said, I'm a little bit late to the game, and I'm not really in a position to be like, it's so amazing and it's coming out and watch for the release. But I am in a position to talk a little bit about Blacker yarns and how much they've inspired me. So Blacker has a really nice website. It's beautiful if you're not familiar with them. I wanted to highlight their values that they include and choose to use to speak to the consumer. So on their website, I just thought I would go through and just highlight this great work of this company. That we believe our customers are always right. You may need our help and expertise in order to realize your ambitions, but we always try to ensure you get the best possible product and service. We believe in buying and making local and are convinced there is an international future for high-quality UK manufactured goods. That's great conviction to have and move forward with such vision. We believe in creating things to last. We believe there is an important future and role for farming and for the countryside as the lungs and heart of the UK. We believe it is wrong to use oil-based or high-energy input fibers when wool and other natural fibers are sustainable, high-performance raw materials providing warmth, insulation, and comfort. For the sake of the people living on the planet and future, we believe in doing as little damage as possible. So I really came to Blacker, I believe, through Kate Davies' blog, and once I found them, I was like hog heaven for me. I love that there was breed specific. I love that it capitalized on place. I love that it was milled in the same area, etc. So, and I just love the thoughtfulness behind the product and the very clear communication of that product with the consumer. So thank you so much to Blacker for including me in your release and excitement of this special yarn. But don't be discouraged as I'm late to the game with this, because I'm sure you can find something just as meaningful and thoughtful if you head on over and you want to participate with this company as a consumer. So that's Brushwork. Oh, I can tell you my color. It's Scumble. I got this great. Comes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 colors. And I believe Brit Yarn may still carry some of this as well. It comes in, I give you the stats, shall I? It comes in 50 grams. It's 152 meters or 165 yards, sport weight. And yeah, so thank you so much for including me in that celebration and allowing me the opportunity to work with the yarn. If I were gonna, and I still might, I have to figure out where I'm at. I am going to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. And that being said, I'm thinking, Ruby is sharking with my stuff. I'm thinking I could put an order in and have it sent to somebody. I might even be able to have it sent to Louise in Scotland because I'm going in there in the summer, and then it'll be there. So, but I would definitely, well, I'm a garment knitter, so I would totally do a sweater out of this, and or a vest, something for a warm underlayer that might be worn under a jacket, like an open front jacket. So I think maybe just some sort of textured vest would be perfect, and then you get the nice warmth of the woolen spun and fine merino Shetland alpaca. And then you could wear something with more tensile strength as an outer garment, durable good, etc. So in thinking about yarns and using them, you can think about how to layer those pieces to get the best wear and durability. Ruby has a boot. No surprises there. The other thing I purchased was I got another bag from Matterroot. I love to highlight her work because it is just so beautiful. So I didn't have the Pussy Willows, so I picked that up. But she's always creating new designs. I'm always having to add to my collection. I really love these bags. I can't recreate them. I can't get the fabric. I can't silk screen. So I think it's a really nice, unique piece to have that I can't do. Right, so let's see, did I talk about, yep. I was gifted the Twigs pattern by Bee Mandarines, and it's a yoke, and I wanted to show that to you. I think I have some Elsa Cormo wool worsted, and I think I'm going to use that for this. It's a yoke, textured yoke, and she generously sent it along to me. And I'm looking forward to casting it right on. So it's kind of fun to do some cable work and textured work on the yoke versus color. And if you're looking for an opportunity to do that, then I could definitely suggest Twigs. It's knit in a worsted on US 7 and US 5s. And she did it out of Shelter. And I will be doing it out of the Cormo. Cormo is a really nice round plump yarn, so I think that it will help make those cables pop. Oh, what's the matter? The other inspiration I just wanted to talk about was, oh, it's on here. It's like curses, it's over there. Was Sarah Pomegranate of Yarns at Yin, who knit the Bresse dress. She details the journey of knitting this dress, spinning for it, knitting it on her I'm going to go to Mason Dixon on her podcast. But I wanted to just show you her finished object because it really was stunning. And I got an opportunity to try it on, and I feel like it's a really good wardrobe staple. And here she is in it. That's her friend Mary Beth and her Birkin. But you can see Sarah, she changes the motifs. She adds some shaping in the back. And when I tried that on, it was like I never wanted to take it off. Emily at Fibertown tried it on. She looked great. I mean, it just was a really, comfortable dress that you could work in. You do chores in. I mean, it had a lot of applications, and it was warm, and it could be probably 3 season in this state. Events. I think I mentioned very briefly, I am going to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I'm really excited. I'll be traveling with Claire of New Hampshire Knits, and we've bought our plane tickets. And that's probably all I can tell you. I'm sure there'll be some adventuring and fiber trekking for sure beyond just the city itself. But for the moment, we are very excited to be attending on Friday. I think we're flying in Thursday night. We'll be attending the market on Friday. And I'm not sure if I'll be participating in the Podcaster Lounge. I have applied. So anyway, if you're planning to be there and you see me, I will say this again, I'm sure in March, but I'll look forward to meeting you and having more conversations about all the great things and the ways that wool brings us together. I'm getting tired, I can tell. Let's see. Oh, last but not least, Shackleton has kind of fallen off the map or frozen in the ice a bit, but my friend Louise found this book about Shackleton and some whiskey. And he had set and left on a previous expedition, 300 bottles of this old Scottish Highland malt. And the malt had been made with peat from Edie, the island that Vergennes Farm is on. All of these crazy connections to Shackleton, right? Anyway, it was left there and it wasn't discovered until 2007. And so somebody, Neville Peat has written a book about that particular whiskey blend, or whiskey. And anyway, my dad has the book. Louise sent it over. My dad has the book and he's reading it. So how crazy is that? Shackleton, long-standing connections. It's kind of uncanny though, isn't it? That being said, I'm going to bid you a fond farewell. I can hear my puppy sharking away, and I don't want to leave her too long to get into mischief. So anyway, I hope wherever you are well and in good spirits, and wherever your fiber trucks may take you, may you return home safe and with lots of soulful stash. I'll see you next time. Bye.